Talladega Nights feels like a comedy that came out already quotable. Cars screaming around the track. Sponsors pasted over everything that moves. Ricky Bobby praying to baby Jesus like the fate of America depends on it. Clarke Duncan Jr. grinning like a man who has never once edited a thought. And a NASCAR world so loud and overcommit the movie barely has to exaggerate it to make it funny. But under that high-octane stupidity, the movie had to find its shape the hard way. NASCAR still didn't trust Hollywood after Days of Thunder. So, this one had to earn its way onto the track. Then, when it hit, it did more than score laughs. It turned Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly into one of the great comedy duos of the 2000s. And the darkest turn comes after the laughs because some of the kids who helped make the chaos unforgettable ended up on much rougher roads in real life. These are 10 weird facts about Talladega Nights, the sports comedy that looks completely ridiculous on the surface while hiding a much messier story underneath. Number 1. Talladega Nights did not begin because Will Ferrell and Adam McKay grew up dreaming about stock cars. It began because NASCAR looked huge, loud, overbranded, and just slightly unreal from the outside. That was the hook. Back around Elf, Ferrell and McKay were already circling ideas for what to do next, and NASCAR kept pulling their attention. Not as fans first, as observers. They were looking at this giant American machine built out of speed, sponsors, ritual, ego, and noise. And the more they looked at it, the more it already felt like a movie. Then they went to the track. That changed everything. Once they were standing there with the engine shaking the air and the whole event hitting them at full scale, the idea stopped being some funny little thought experiment. It got bigger. McKay and Ferrell were not just asking would it be funny if Will played a NASCAR driver. They were trying to figure out how to make a comedy that still captured how thrilling this world actually felt when it was right in front of you. That part mattered to Ferrell especially. He did not want a lazy parody where the racing was just background noise for jokes. He wanted the audience to feel the same rush they had felt at the track. The speed, the fear, the spectacle, and the ridiculousness of a world this intense being treated like everyday life. That is when the movie found its shape. The joke was never just NASCAR. The joke was putting Ferrell inside a world that was already emotionally overcommit, hyper-American, and enormous enough to feel cinematic before they had even started writing Ricky Bobby. And once they understood that, the whole pitch collapsed into one perfect sentence. Will Ferrell as a NASCAR driver. 6 words, no long explanation, no complicated setup. You heard it once and either laughed or wanted to buy it immediately. Ferrell was coming off Elf and Anchorman. McKay had already proven he knew how to build a hit around that comic persona. The image sold itself so cleanly that studios started fighting for it, and Sony won. But that was only the easy part, because the second the movie became real, it ran into NASCAR's long memory. Number 2. The second Talladega Nights stopped being a funny idea and started becoming a real movie. It ran into a problem that had nothing to do with Will Ferrell. NASCAR did not automatically trust Hollywood anymore. And a big reason was Days of Thunder. That movie had left enough bad blood behind that people in racing still felt burned by how the sport had been treated on screen. From their side, NASCAR had been turned into backdrop. The drivers had been flattened into stereotypes, and the culture itself had not really been understood. So when Ferrell and McKay came in with a comedy, they were not walking into a neutral room. They were walking into old suspicion. Talladega Nights could not survive if NASCAR thought the whole movie was built on laughing at the sport from the outside. Ferrell and McKay understood that fast. They had to make one thing clear. They were not trying to make fun of NASCAR. They were trying to have fun with NASCAR. Even then, the trust only opened part of the way. NASCAR itself eventually cooperated, but many individual drivers and teams still kept their distance. A few names stepped in for quick cameos like Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Jamie McMurray, but the garages did not exactly throw the doors open. The old bruises were still there. The movie had to thread a very narrow lane. It had to be wild enough to be funny, but not so careless that NASCAR felt humiliated all over again. And even after that, the movie still had another fight ahead of it. What to call the thing? Number 3. NASCAR was willing to work with the production, but that did not mean it was comfortable with everything attached to the movie. The sport had spent years trying to push back against the easiest stereotypes. So a title built around Talladega made some people nervous fast. From their side, it risked pulling the movie too hard toward one southern speedway, and all the redneck baggage outsiders were always ready to pile onto it. The name started moving. Different alternatives got floated, including Loud and Proud. For a stretch, the production even operated under High, Wide, and Handsome. Another option was Red, White, and Racing, which tells you exactly what they were hunting for. Something big, American, and NASCAR-friendly, without leaning too hard into caricature. But none of those names had the same stupid music to them. The final title was ridiculous in exactly the right way. Talladega Nights, the Ballad of Ricky Bobby, sounds huge, loud, and mythic, even though it is also kind of nonsense. At the time, Talladega Superspeedway did not even have lights, so a real Talladega night race was not possible. And despite the subtitle, there is no literal ballad of Ricky Bobby floating through the movie either. The name did not win because it was accurate. It won because it sounded like the movie felt. Number 4. One of the smartest decisions in Talladega Nights was also the easiest one to miss. Adam McKay did not treat the racing like background noise. That would have been the easy version. Make the jokes broad, let the cars blur by, use NASCAR as colorful wallpaper while Ferrell does the heavy lifting. He went the other way. If the racing looked fake, the whole movie would shrink. So even with all the stupidity and the absurd Ricky Bobby nonsense, McKay wanted the track to feel real. Real speed, real danger, real heat, real scale. The production shot at actual tracks like Talladega Superspeedway and Charlotte Motor Speedway. That gave the movie something you cannot fake on a backlot. The size of the place, the glare, the noise, the way the air feels heavy around the cars. Then McKay pushed the actors into it too. Ferrell, Riley, and Sacha Baron Cohen all went through training at the Richard Petty driving experience. Not so they could become real drivers, but so they could stop looking like tourists in a race car. The training did not make them feel cool. It scared them. They got taken out on the track at real speed, and the experience was rough enough that Ferrell, McKay, and Reilly wanted out almost immediately. Ferrell later admitted that Ricky Bobby's panic line about feeling like he is flying down the road when he is actually crawling was not some wild comic invention. It was close to how they actually felt. The racing had to feel real first. Then the stupidity could go to work. Number 5. The clearest sign Talladega Nights had found the right villain came before the movie even came out. It happened in front of a real NASCAR crowd. Ferrell, Riley, and Sacha Baron Cohen showed up in character at a real racing event. No movie theater, no friendly comedy audience, just a huge live crowd that would tell you immediately if these characters felt fake. Ricky Bobby and Cal got exactly the kind of welcome you would expect. Then Jean Girard got introduced, and the crowd turned on him instantly. He had not done anything yet. He was just standing there as the polished French driver, and that was enough. The boos came fast. The movie did not have to manufacture the reaction. The character hit a nerve on sight. That only worked because Cohen built Girard very carefully. He did not play him like a loud cartoon foreigner and hope the accent did all the work. He gave Girard a very specific texture. Sleek, controlled, superior, the kind of man who looks expensive before he even opens his mouth. That polish is what makes him unbearable to Ricky Bobby's world. He is not disruptive because he is wild. He is disruptive because he is composed. Cohen was deep in his Borat era, already associated with outsider characters who create chaos the second they walk into a room. Girard could easily have turned into another version of that energy. He didn't. He glides in, stays elegant, and makes Ricky look small just by existing near him. The fans booed exactly the man the movie needed them to hate. Number 6. Cal works because he never feels like Ricky Bobby's backup. He feels like a guy who has been living in this world so long, he got stuck there. That clicked for John C. Reilly when he stopped looking at modern NASCAR drivers. They were too clean, too fit, too polished, too much like real athletes. That was not Cal. So Reilly went backward, digging through old racing photos from the 1960s and 1970s until he found the version of NASCAR he wanted. The sideburns, the mutton chops, the strange facial hair, the softer, less athletic bodies. Reilly locked onto that instantly. He has even said those were his people. Then he filled that face with absolute certainty. That is why the Mike Honcho scene lands so hard. It does not feel like a joke being delivered. It feels like Cal accidentally revealing his whole soul. The shamelessness, the loyalty, the complete lack of embarrassment. Reilly improvised it, and Ferrell was basically hanging on for dear life, trying not to break, because the scene suddenly became more than funny. It became a perfect explanation of who Cal is. Not just loud, not just dumb, but fully built. Ricky Bobby may be the star, but Cal is the one you remember. Number 7. In a movie full of people fighting to be the loudest person in the room, Clarke Duncan wins by doing almost the opposite. He just stands there, and somehow that is enough. On paper, he could have been just another crew guy beside Ricky Bobby feeding setup lines while everybody else does the real comedy. Instead, Duncan gives him weight and warmth, the kind of presence that makes him feel like one of the only actual adults anywhere near the circus. Lucius is not killing scenes by trying to be crazier than Ricky or Cal. He is funny because he feels solid inside, all that chaos. He can sound comforting and intimidating in the same breath. Some of the best touches came from Duncan himself. The knife speech, where Lucius talks about using a second knife, while Ricky is panicking, came from an old pre-fame job digging ditches for a gas company where workers really did use a second bit to pull one loose from concrete. It sounds too weird to be invented cleanly because it wasn't. Then the movie hands him one more left turn. Adam McKay told Duncan to sing Donna Summer over the end credits, and Duncan thought it was just some throwaway extra that might end up buried on a DVD. Instead, it stayed in the movie. One of the biggest, toughest men in the cast winds up closing out this giant NASCAR comedy by singing Last Dance. Everybody else is trying to blow the room apart. Lucius just walks through it and makes the whole thing better. Number 8. Some of the most unhinged energy in Talladega Nights does not come from Ricky Bobby. It comes from the children. The movie did not get that by sanding them down into cute little scene stealers. It got it by letting them act like tiny maniacs and trusting the camera to survive the blast. Grayson Russell did not come through some polished child actor pipeline. His mother took him to the open casting call because his dad was away at a fishing tournament and they were bored. The audition immediately went sideways in exactly the right way. He got asked a simple question, answered it wrong, and somewhere in the mess started talking about his teacher having a lumpy butt. That is the kind of answer that makes a room realize the kid already sounds like he wandered out of this movie. Once filming started, they did not clean the chaos up. They leaned into it. The boys were encouraged to yell, riff, and throw out whatever came into their heads, which is why those scenes still feel so alive. What makes them land differently now is what happened after the camera stopped. Grayson Russell kept acting, later becoming familiar through Diary of a Wimpy Kid, then moved into music and more screen work. Houston Tumlin went somewhere completely different. He left acting behind, joined the Army, served with the 101st Airborne, and earned his air assault wings. Then in 2021, Tumlin died at just 28 years old. His mother turned that loss into action by starting a nonprofit in his name focused on veterans' mental health. One of the movie's wildest little chaos agents ended up leaving behind one of its heaviest real-world aftershocks. Then there is Luke Bygum, who played young Ricky Bobby. His path bent darker too. In later years, he ran into serious legal trouble, including arrests tied to reckless driving and domestic violence. 3 kids, 3 futures, and no hint yet of where any of them would end up. Number 9. A lot of comedy pairings work once, and then disappear. This one didn't. Talladega Nights is the movie where Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly stop feeling like 2 actors who happen to be funny in the same frame and start feeling like an actual team. The real engine is what happens when the 2 of them bounce off each other. The loyalty, the insecurity, the dumb confidence, the way every scene feels like it could turn into either a pep talk or a complete emotional collapse. Talladega Nights is where the pairing really locks. Not just funny, not just compatible, but repeatable. The kind of duo audiences instantly want back because the rhythm feels too specific to waste on one movie. Ferrell brings the blind confidence, the big swings, the total commitment to public humiliation. Reilly does something just as important on the other side. He makes the stupidity feel loyal, wounded, and weirdly human. He is not just echoing Ricky Bobby. He is building Cal into his own kind of disaster. One man is convinced he was born to be number one. The other is happy to stand beside him right up until the second his own resentment starts leaking through. That balance turned out to be bigger than one film. Once Talladega Nights hit, they became a pairing people wanted to see again, leading straight into Step Brothers and much later Holmes and Watson. Reilly has openly said Ferrell is the funniest person he has ever met. Ferrell has never treated Reilly like a sidekick. He treats him like a secret weapon. This one held because both men knew the joke got bigger when they trusted each other to make it messier. Number 10. When Talladega Nights hit theaters in 2006, it worked right away. The movie opened at number 1 with about $47 million, the biggest opening weekend of Ferrell's career at that point. By the end of its run, it had made roughly $163 million worldwide. But the box office is only the first half of the story because this movie did not stop at being successful. It turned into one of those comedies people keep carrying around. The lines did not stay in the theater. They leaked out into reruns, conversations, and group jokes people still throw around without even setting them up. If you ain't first, you're last. I'm not sure what to do with my hands. Those are not neat little punchlines you laugh at once and leave behind. They are the kind of lines people just say like everyone else is already supposed to know the rhythm. That is the kind of afterlife most comedies never get. A lot of them make money, get a few laughs, and fade. Talladega Nights kept living in people's mouths. The thing is built to replay. Fast rhythm, huge characters, quotes that hit once and stay loose in the culture forever. The box office made it a hit. The quotes made it stick. Talladega Nights doesn't play embarrassment halfway. It takes childish pride, fake confidence, hurt feelings, patriotic nonsense, and race day ego and pushes it until the whole movie feels like a machine built out of American overreaction. The jokes are huge. The commitment is bigger. And if there is one line you still say for no reason at all, you already know exactly which one it is.